Now, in this whole thing about the legislation, the legalization of cannabis that has come around so far at the time of this recording, and there's a number of states that have legalized, claimed legalization, but already you're starting to hear that the fruit of that legalization is being questioned. How it was implemented is actually favoring, surprise, surprise, corporations. That is actually making it difficult for you, an independent person being in the marketplace. You're getting priced out of being part of this economic boom. We have a history of small farmers who have been supplying cannabis marijuana during the time when it was under prohibition. They're quite well prepared in their knowledge to continue now under legalization to supply access. And it gives them they come out of the dark into a legitimate business enterprise. And that's good because it spreads this economic factor, economic growth, broadly based. Corporation attitude, typical Republican foolishness and fraud, shrinks. It just goes to a corporation. And a corporation says, we can supply 10,000 plants. Which is true, And some of that will happen because there's going to be and already is being demonstrated in places like Colorado, Washington State, Canada, that is now legalized. There's an issue with adequate supply because the demand is so big. Because now that it's legalized, we're actually finding out, folks, a lot of people were using pot while it was illegal. A lot of people. A lot more than the estimates. Because it was all secret, Who's going to say during this fascism of repression, of prohibition, that, oh, geez, I'm a user. They're not. Everything had to be secret and whatnot. So those estimates were way off. Well, we got to keep remembering that part of legalization is that economic aspect to help just that, the local economics. So when states legalized, they needed to make the availability of licenses, the fees of licenses to be a legalized grower, all that, they had to be reasonable, very marginal, so that we could expand the economic base of economic growth, of benefit, common sense. But corporations, once again, swept in and took that away in your legislatures. And how that was accomplished is because most states really generated legalization through a public initiative. You voted it in. You demanded it in. Not the legislature. So you turned it over to the legislature once it was legalized to do more of how it's going to be implemented. And they do a lousy job. They're screwing you over. Why? Because they're ignorant people about pot, of legalization, of the whole business. And they're very much bought into just the idea of taxes, tax revenue. We'll tax them. And it's still like a repression, intentional repression as well. Oh, make the taxes really high. Oh, geez, make them high, make them suffer. Because that's the attitude that's still lingering there of the policy of prohibition. Now, any state, considering from looking at the experiences of the states who have legalized, should be saying, we got to encourage these small family farm kind of size productions so that we encourage economic broad-based development tied to this not only cannabis marijuana, but cannabis hemp as well. And make it very, expansive in your economy. There's a lot of states throughout the Midwest, folks, who are very attuned already to being agriculture states. They got a lot of Illinois, Iowa, in through there. And all those states are complaining right now of there's no business in these little rural areas. The digital world of everything has pushed into the urban centers. And these rural areas are still dicking along with no idea where to go. What are they going to do for economics? Well, here they are with an opportunity of economic growth based in the fact that they are an agricultural area. They do have the agricultural infrastructure. And they need the work. They need the business. And you could pump up the economic activity there, which would then start to expand out into all sorts of other jobs. Because as you saw in Colorado generated over $3 billion in economic growth, from things like electricians, plumbers, builders, carpenters, heating, air conditioning, as well as restaurants, hotels, real estate, home building, the whole broad-based aspect of legalization. So you want that to be the idea and keep that going. Well, you do that by not letting corporations dominate in the production, in their ability to come in and just say, we'll put down this big structure and we can generate tens of, 1,000 plants, 10,000 plants, or whatever, Some of that you initially will need just to meet demand. But you sure should be paying very good attention to keeping it broad-based economics. And that the people who did generate this whole thing of legalization, which is correct, and who do have these littler, we could say, just kind of mom and pop kind of size grows, or have been doing it for years, that they have the ability to still be in the marketplace and have access to the marketplace by keeping their costs, their fees, their licensing fees, that type of stuff, as reasonably low as it should be. Now we also got to get in here with this thing and remember, we also are going to allow, just like in the alcohol business, you're going to allow home cultivation. And you're not putting a cap on home cultivation. A lot of states already say, well, you can home cultivate, well, you can have 6 plants. So what? No, there's no reason to put that cap on there. We don't care if you grow 6 plants or 60 or 100. Doesn't matter. It's legal. It's your responsibility for some basic things about being that whatever you grow. Common sense. But we're not going to say the home cultivator, oh, you can't do more than, oh, geez, you can't produce more. The attitude is, of course, that they're trying to say, well, you got to do that because, if a guy starts growing 60 or 100 plants, he's more like the black market again. He's going to start being economically, and he's involved, and he's going to be undercutting our legal system. And the whole point is to make it legal to cut out the black market, which is true. A big part of this is getting rid of the black market, the criminal enterprise that the black market has been. Well, in home cultivation, we still have to say, all right, You can home. We don't care. You just can't turn it around and make it an economic subsidy of some kind. You got to have some avenues there where you say, well, you're supplying something for people who are poor, who can't otherwise afford the open market. And because remember, we're still talking medical use here, which is proven to be very viable and true. Well, they also need to have access at, just like any, medicine, they got to have access to the medicine for people who are poor and can really benefit as well. So it's like this first wave of the legalization and seeing how it's implemented. And then the next step, of course, is you have to get into the legislature. You have to be governor, into the Congress. And you have to state that agenda is that you're getting rid of the policy of prohibition with all these little nuances that are actually still repressing and denying. And instead we want to make sure that with you being in there and you being knowledgeable about the business, about the access needs, about home cultivation, that you are generating the correct legislation that makes that happen and wipes out the immediate dominance that states have gone to. California's crying about it, where it's gone to, right away gone to corporations. Canada's crying about it already. There's big, corporate growers already getting contracts to supply for just a province or for Canada-wide type of thing. Well, we got to have the small guys in there as well, that they're able to be in the marketplace and whatnot. It's like we should use it already as the beer market example. For a long time you couldn't really produce home brew. It was very limited. Then it became, okay, you can make home brew. Well, those home brewer guys got really good at it. And look what happened. They generated this huge market in small production breweries. We call it craft beers now. So you still got your monster corporations of Budweiser and Coors and Millers of the big scale. But you see a really big interest in the craft beers market, the specialty beers. And that's more the example to go, that we encourage that scale as well as, okay, you're going to have some of these big guys to supply the big demand. But everybody has standards still about its cleanliness, as it's free from pesticides, as and poisons in the product, it has to be clean, that kind of stuff. You have to have the same in the beer market. And it's then available at a reasonable price, and that the taxation of the small guy is not so dramatic that it really pushes them out of business at all. And maybe just keeps them in the black market. So we're at the first phase of it. Now we have to go to recognize we've seen it, so we've seen these problems. You got to get in there. Well, the only way to address it, folks, is you have to get in and become a candidate and be elected in the legislature, so to actually change the legislation. Because the people in the legislature are pretty much clueless. They're the old school, basically. They're not brilliant about anything about this reality. And if they're Republican, they're the guys who are against you. Anyway. So you got to get in, throw out all these Republicans. You got to get in there with the proper agenda that keeps this broad-based economic possibility going, and at the same time allows home cultivation as well. So that this thing does indeed impact a broad section of you, the population, with economic viability and growth. Which it really can. It really can. It's the second stop here, this next wave coming through. But to do that, you're going to have to be the candidate. You're going to have to be in the legislature, the governor, the Congress. Because you sure can't rely on this old crowd who's been against you, who is clueless, is still part of the policy of prohibition. You can't have them making decisions for you.